What is the United Methodist General Board of Global Ministries? Great question. Today I'm sharing an interview I did with the Director of Mission Theology and Strategic Planning to learn about the board's purpose and what legislation it has submitted for General Conference. Would you introduce yourself?
My name is David Scott, and I'm the Director of Mission Theology and Strategic Planning for the General Board of Global Ministries.
What is the purpose of the General Board of Global Ministries?
The General Board of Global Ministries exists to connect the church in mission. So we believe very firmly that mission is God's mission. Mission begins with and belongs to God. And Global Ministries is honored to be part of God's calling to all of the church to participate in mission. So we recognize that mission is something that all parts of the church, local congregations, individual Christians, conferences at varying levels, and the general agencies participate in. And Global Ministries exists to help connect those different parts of the church as they're seeking to be in mission together in partnership with one another. And then also to carry out some work, especially in the realm of alleviating human suffering that would be difficult for a congregation to do sort of at the congregational level. You know, individual congregations wouldn't necessarily have connections to international aid networks. And so Global Ministries is able to engage in some of that work of alleviating human suffering on behalf of local congregations and annual conferences. But it's also to facilitate the participation by congregation and conferences in God's mission.
In brief, what legislation has your board submitted to the upcoming General Conference?
Global Ministries has taken a relatively minimalist approach to legislation this General Conference, and that includes both legislation that was originally submitted in 2019 and that submitted in 2023. Our major piece of new legislation is a new resolution, Religious Freedom Grounded in Love, which seeks to provide a biblical and theological grounding for the practice of religious freedom around the world. Often that's talked about using human rights language, and we thought it was important to use the biblical language as well. We've also submitted petitions to readopt several resolutions. As you've probably heard from other general agencies, all of the book of resolutions is expiring this year unless readopted. And so we submitted 5 petitions back in 2019 and an additional 10 in 2023 to readopt resolutions that are currently in the book of resolutions. Many of those are readopt as is. We recognize that there might be portions of those resolutions that are out of date or don't quite reflect where the church in the world is at, but we thought it was more important to preserve those resolutions in the book of resolutions and fix them at a future time than to let them fall out and by trying to work on revisions in a way that the legislative committees just might not have time for. We've also submitted legislation to reauthorize national plans for ethnic and minority ministry that reside in Global Ministries. So there are 5 petitions there to reauthorize those plans. One of the plans, the National Plan for Hispanic and Latino Ministries, has requested that oversight for their plan be transferred to GCOR, and we're in support of that or not opposed to that request. And so that is not actually part of the legislation, but is sort of part of the renewal process. And then we had submitted a couple of pieces of legislation back in 2019 that would revise some of the language around partner Methodist denominations. We'd submitted those in conjunction with the Council of Bishops Ecumenical Office, but in further conversations with them, we've decided that now is not the right time for those petitions. Delegates and others can still see those petitions in the ADCA, but we're asking that those petitions be removed pending further conversation with our fellow Methodist denominations.
Is there any other legislation not coming from GBGM that you want to highlight?
We always track a variety of legislation, some of it sort of with direct impact on global ministries. There's a petition that would require all new employees of global ministries to be Trinitarian Christians, which we think would be really unhelpful legislation, potentially in conflict with employment laws in the United States. And so there's legislation like that that we're sort of tracking because we don't want it to pass. There's other legislation that'll sort of shape the context of our work, regionalization and budgets, that we're sort of tracking to see how that develops. And then, some of our sister boards and agencies also have resolution that we're sort of sympathetic to, and we're watching the progress of that as well.
What would happen if the legislation passed or did not pass?
For the reauthorization of the national plans, I think that would be a real tragedy if that legislation did not pass. The national plans have been an important way in which the United Methodist Church has invested in the work of racial, ethnic, local churches across the United States and beyond. And we know that the future of the United States is an increasingly diverse country. And so for the United Methodist Church to reflect that diverse constituency, we really need to invest in the national plans. I can't imagine why that wouldn't pass. It's fairly routine legislation, but I think the consequences of it not passing would really be problematic. I understand that some people might be skeptical or a little bit uncertain of the idea of reauthorizing resolutions that they know are not perfect. But really, these resolutions are one that our staff use on a regular basis and use as we're interacting with other organizations, both within and outside of the United Methodist Church. And so to be able to point to a resolution and say, look, this is something that the United Methodist Church cares about, and we can prove that because we have this resolution that's been authorized by the General Conference, the only body that's able to speak for the United Methodist Church as a whole, is really important. And so I hope delegates will be receptive to the notion that it's important to reauthorize resolutions, even if they're imperfect, that imperfect resolutions are still going to be better than no resolutions.
Is there anything else that I haven't asked you about that you wanted to share?
I've heard from people who have been at General Conference a number of times that General Conference, in addition to being a legislative event, is also like a big family reunion. And so you've got people from all over the world who come together to celebrate and work to improve this church that we all love. And so Global Ministries, in conjunction with the General Board of Higher Education and Ministry, will have a booth there. And so I hope people will stop by and be part of the family reunion with us, strengthen those connections that keep the church connected in mission.
I hope you enjoyed this interview with David Scott from the General Board of Global Ministries. Please leave your feedback in the comments section below and subscribe to get notifications about future Emily Explains videos. Thanks for watching.